Hello guys, welcome back to my channel and enjoy this fanfic part 3. Now let's start the fanfic. Naruto, Kurenai and Neji were all in the Hokage's office, currently standing at attention before Tsunade. This last month had produced greater results than any of them could have ever hoped for. All three of them found it very difficult to contain their enthusiasm at giving their progress reports to the Hokage. Tsunade studied them for a moment before sitting down in her chair. She looked at them and gave the order, report. Naruto allowed Neji and Kurenai to report on the current status of the Genjutsu countering project first. Kurenai briefed Tsunade about the initial success of the first set of field tests involved sensory Genjutsu, even when multiple layers of Genjutsu were involved. She told the Hokage about how Naruto was able to latch on to the chakra entering his body, no matter the point of entry, and he was able to purge it from his body before it was able to even affect him. She briefed her as well about Naruto's new chakra flow identification skill, as he dubbed it, leaving a very impressed Tsunade. She then reported Naruto's difficulty with mental, emotional Genjutsu, which is what prompted them to enlist Neji's services in the first place. Neji chose this point to take over the briefing. He had informed Tsunade that when he paid attention to Naruto's chakra flow, and the flow of the chakra that Kurenai had sent into his body when performing Genjutsu that attacked his mind, he noticed the chakra behaving differently, as though it was behaving more as particles as opposed to solid chakra. As Neji had content to observe, he gave the suggestion that instead of trying to latch onto it, he should try to encase it instead. Naruto did this, essentially learning to use his own chakra as a magnet of sorts against the particular nature of the chakra that was attacking his mind. This seemed to work, though Naruto needed to spend most of the rest of the month practicing this skill, and, while proficient at it, he had not yet mastered it, and it certainly wasn't ready for field tests yet. Neji informed the Hokage that both he and Naruto were practicing these skills, and that with more practice, and as they shared their own findings with each other, that he and Naruto should have the chakra encasement skill mastered by the time the next progress report was due at the latest. Still working on mastering this skill, they had not gotten to exploring ways to counter environmental Genjutsu yet. Kurenai and Neji both summed up that they thought the project would need more than 6 months to complete. Tsunade looked at Naruto to get his opinion. Naruto simply nodded in agreement with the two of them. Deciding that they didn't need to renegotiate the mission or the contract just yet, Tsunade moved to the next point of discussion, dismissing Neji, as his presence was no longer required. Neji took his leave with a bow, returning home to his wife. As Neji had left, Tsunade turned to Naruto and Kurenai, and asked them for their report concerning Kurenai's Fuinjutsu education and the training that Naruto was giving to her. Both Naruto and Kurenai broke out into excited smiles as they began to share their past month in training with their Hokage, who hadn't missed the fact that they were starting to finish each other's sentences. Training had continued for Kurenai much as it had during the first week, with gradual increases in weight and number of reps. Additional stretches, acrobatics training, and dodging of high-speed projectiles while performing the morning routine had also been added to the workout. She both cursed Naruto for his ever-increasing sadism in training, and sang his praises for the number of chakra tags he had created that performed healing jutsu using converted medical chakra. Over the course of the month, her overall strength evened out to the point where she was performing the same number of exercises with both the left and right arm or leg, and she was also now adding chakra into many of her attacks and movements in so many different ways that she found it hard to be able to list them all. The most impressive skill that she had recently acquired, though, was her ability to negate chakra from the physical attacks of others. Neji had graciously volunteered to be her guinea pig for this skill. When Neji tried closing her tenketsu points, or flooding chakra into her body, she was able to disperse the attacking chakra at just the right moment before he was able to eject it into her, essentially making gentle fist strikes useless against her. As impressed as he was with this skill, and with the fact that Naruto seemed to possess a greater mastery of it than Kurenai did, he asked if the two of them could keep that ability under wraps for now. He didn't need Hiashi or Hinata getting wind of the fact that he had inadvertently helped them create a counter to most of the Gentle Fist's offensive techniques. Over the month itself, Kurenai's weights had increased by a total combined amount of 75 pounds or so, and she had doubled the number of reps that she was performing, showing greater increases in speed and stamina than in overall strength, though she had gotten stronger as well. She had also started using the frictionless ropes for combined chakra, strength, speed training, resulting in further increases in both her reserves and her fine-tuned control. Naruto had also started training her ninjutsu as well. This, of course, started with a further expanded lecture on chakra theory as it related to ninjutsu, as well as telling her about some concepts that he himself had uncovered and coined. Okay, Kurenai, as we train your ninjutsu, we'll also get you started on your change in chakra nature to fire chakra. You'll develop an understanding of how fire chakra feels, how it flows, and what it can do when used in jutsu. We're also going to beef up your ninjutsu arsenal while we're doing this so that you'll have more practice with how chakra flow feels when performing ninjutsu as opposed to performing genjutsu or taijutsu. I can't really speak from experience on this, but my understand is that chakra flow when performing ninjutsu is more regimented, for lack of a better word, while chakra flow for genjutsu is a little more free-flowing. The best way I understand it is that chakra flow in genjutsu is more like an art, whereas ninjutsu treats chakra flow more like a science. Kurenai once again nodded, showing that she understood the analogy he had made. In truth, she did allow her chakra to flow more freely than most, simply due to the nature of her specialty. With the few ninjutsu she did know, she noticed that the chakra flow had to be much more measured and precise than it did for her genjutsu. Naruto continued his lecture. Before I talk more about change in chakra nature to fire chakra, I want to talk about the concept of chakra memory. Chakra memory? Kurenai asked, confused at the new term. Yes, chakra memory, as I've come to call it, is a lot like muscle memory, in that like your muscles remember exactly how to move in certain ways once you've trained them enough, so also, the chakra coils remember exactly how to mold chakra once you've molded it in specific ways enough times. This is a bit like chakra control, but it's not quite the same. It's chakra memory that allows a shinobi to use a jutsu without the required hand seals, because their chakra network has molded the chakra in the exact ratios enough times to know exactly how it's done. You, for example, can substitute and transform without hand signs, right? Kurenai nodded in the affirmative. Could you always? Naruto asked in response. Kurenai simply shook her head in the negative before adding, but I do remember it becoming steadily easier for me to do that, and one day I found I didn't need to use the hand seals, because exactly as you said, my chakra almost seemed to mold itself. And that, Kurenai, is chakra memory at work, said Naruto, seeing that she understood exactly what he was saying. He continued, now, the nice thing about chakra memory is, because it's a function of the chakra network, shadow clones can be used to train and increase it. Kurenai nodded and allowed a smile to grace her lips at this. She was beginning to see the possibilities of this kind of training, even though she wouldn't be able to do it to anywhere near the degree that Naruto could. She knew that she could still benefit from training using about 10 shadow clones at once right now as opposed to her original effective limit of 5. Naruto led her outside to the rear grounds and brought her to a tree. He jumped up, broke one of the branches off the tree, and laid the branch on the ground. Kurenai looked on in confusion. Naruto then explained what she was going to do. You are going to create a few clones, and they are going to train to burn a leaf using only their chakra. Let me demonstrate. He finished before he picked a leaf from the branch he had just retrieved, sent some chakra into it, and held the leaf as it began to smoke and then catch fire. As you can see, Naruto continued, fire is not my main element, so it takes me longer to train it and shape it than it does for me to shape wind. However, burning the leaf will be easier for you once you master how to do it. Now, as I said before, each change in chakra nature feels different. Take wind, for example. It's a cutting element, so when I'm molding wind chakra, I'm trying to imagine my chakra as though it's like two thin and razor-sharp edges, grinding against each other, creating a cutting effect. I'll demonstrate this as well. He paused as he picked up a leaf, channeled chakra into it, showing Kurenai that it cut into several bits, and quite a bit faster than he had been able to set the leaf on fire before. Naruto continued once again, what you want to do to change your chakra's nature into fire chakra is to imagine your chakra getting really hot really fast, to the point where when it catches flame, so to speak, the release of heat feels self-sustaining. Hot and self-sustaining is what you're after, does that make sense? She nodded in the affirmative after Naruto's demonstration. Okay, then, make 10 shadow clones and start them on this, Naruto ordered. Kurenai complied, making 10 shadow clones and starting each of them on the leaf burning exercise as ordered. As Kurenai's clones would work on that, Naruto would alternate days between bringing the original Kurenai into the Fuinjutsu lab and get her to work on her seal painting and etching technique, and working on his clinical trials for the Genjutsu countering project with Neji. While she was working on her seal painting technique, he began to show her how to create a few basic seals well, basic for him, anyway, as his basic seals could outstrip anything one could buy at any shinobi gear store, anywhere, as well as showing her how seal nodes and ports work, and demonstrating conduits as he made some simple seal arrays. 1. She had gotten leaf burning mastered easily enough, it had only taken her a week or so to master it, as her fine-tuned chakra control was already extraordinary, so Naruto moved her on to setting a down tree ablaze using nothing but her chakra. This task she found a little daunting, and during the time she had been practicing this exercise, there was more than one occasion where her clones would dispel simply because they ran out of chakra. She was still working to master this exercise, as she could make certain spots on the tree catch fire at the moment, but she couldn't set the whole tree ablaze in one shot yet. While doing this, Naruto also beefed up her fire-style ninjutsu arsenal with the fire-style Fireball Jutsu, the fire-style Phoenix Flower Jutsu, the fire-style Dragon Flame Jutsu, the fire-style Flame Bomb, and the fire-style Dragon Flame Bomb. He also taught her the Shuriken Shadow Clone Jutsu, the Kunai Shadow Clone Jutsu, and one that quickly became a favorite of hers, the Exploding Shadow Clone. Learning these jutsu had been easy enough, but she had to work very hard to try to master them, another exercise that found her chakra control and reserves increasing more and more, though training ninjutsu made her feel as though her chakra control was taking 2 steps back for every 3 steps forward. This feeling only got worse when Naruto had finally introduced chakra shape manipulation during the last week. Sorry grandma, I'm afraid that I'm using a Namikaze clan technique to train her ability to change chakra shape, so I can't discuss the details of it, I'm sure you understand. Tsunade sighed and nodded reluctantly. She had been highly impressed with what Naruto and Kurenai had shared so far about the progress they were making in Kurenai's training. Tsunade could begin to see the change in Kurenai. She carried herself with a lot more confidence and poise than she had even before, and the overall shape of her body was also beginning to change. She was becoming even leaner than she was before, certain curves starting to become more accentuated with some added lean muscle underneath, enhancing Kurenai's overall curvature. Looking back up at the pair, she noticed absently once again that they seemed to fit very well together. Both were very good-looking people, both extraordinary ninja, and both of them just seemed to like being around each other. She smirked at the pair as she allowed herself to ponder the possibilities. Kurenai raised a nervous eyebrow at the busty blonde, while Naruto narrowed his eyes in suspicion at her. Tsunade caught Naruto's look and, knowing that he knew that her smirk typically meant trouble for him, schooled her features back into a pleasant smile. Excellent news, both of you. She praised her two subordinates as she continued, I look forward to continued reports of your progress. You're dismissed. Both Kurenai and Naruto bowed to her and left her office. Tsunade allowed her mind to start working again towards the direction of Naruto and Kurenai as a possible couple once again after they had walked out the door. Naruto and Kurenai, on the other hand, found themselves walking through the streets of Konoha. While they usually did this in the early evenings, it was now just shy of noon, and the pair were heading towards the Hyuga compound to invite Neji and Tenten Hyuga to join them for lunch at the Akamichi barbecue pit to celebrate their progress in the Genjutsu countering project. Since they had left the Hokage's office, Kurenai couldn't help but think back to the chakra shape manipulation training exercises she had been doing in the last week. Naruto began his lecture on chakra form manipulation. Now that you're well on your way to mastering your change in chakra nature to at least one element, we're going to get you started on change in chakra form. As I've said before, this is important for several reasons. The main reason it's important for you is that it's one more method that will add to the variety of ways in which you control and manipulate your chakra, which will further increase your overall chakra control, giving you access to more and more genjutsu. It's also important in ninjutsu and taijutsu, and even has benefits in kenjutsu. With ninjutsu, it enables you to more easily shape your attacks and the jutsu themselves into things like dragons, walls, bullets, senbon needles, all kinds of things. With taijutsu, manipulating the form of your chakra when adding it to a punch or kick, for example, can make the attack cause more blunt force trauma, or it can add a cutting effect if you make it thin and sharp, much like with wind-based ninjutsu, for example. Chakra can be channeled through weapons and blades in this manner as well, also increasing the diversity of attacks performed when using them. Any questions so far? Kurenai shook her head, letting him know that she understood his explanation. Naruto nodded, good. Then follow me, as he walked out into the rear grounds of his estate. Kurenai followed him to a bucket filled with what looked like water balloons. Asked Kurenai in a tone denoting her confusion. Naruto nodded, that's right. What I'm about to show you is the first stage in a three-part chakra shape manipulation exercise. I'm afraid it's the only one I'm really familiar with that can train someone in shape manipulation from scratch, so it's what I'm going to use to teach you, and if you perform all three stages well, there'll be a really nice little bonus for you at the end of it. Kurenai nodded, still confused but also intrigued by the possibility of the bonus that Naruto mentioned. Naruto picked up one of the water balloons and held it in his right hand. Watch the balloon, he instructed her. She did as asked, and watched the balloon begin to bubble and burst within about 2 seconds. Her eyes widened in surprise, and then narrowed in thought as she tried to decipher what she saw and figure out what happened. Naruto, whose teaching style was a little more informative than his master's, decided to fill Kurenai in. The first part of this exercise is about rotation. Using just chakra, no change in nature, you make the balloon burst. I'll perform this part again a little more slowly, and I want you to tell me what you see. With this, he picked up another water balloon, and began to stream chakra into it more slowly than before. This time, The balloon took about 7 seconds to burst as the water inside of it seemed to spin in a single direction, and then began to bubble more and more before finally bursting from the seeming boil, Kurenai observing very closely the whole time to discern as much as she could about what had happened. After a few moments of contemplation, she began to tell him her conclusions. Well, I saw that the water seemed to rotate in one direction at first. She paused before playing what she saw over and over in her mind's eye, continuing when she believed she had it. It started to bubble more and more the more you did it, but now that I think about it, not all of the points where the balloon bubbled traveled in the same direction, did they? She finished with a question so that Naruto could either confirm or deny her conclusion. Naruto gave her a knowing smirk. Good eye. What does that tell you about how to complete this part of the exercise? Kurenai thought for a moment before answering knowingly. It means that I have to somehow make my chakra rotate in as many directions as I can at once in order to make the balloon burst. Excellent, complimented Naruto. He picked up 2 water balloons this time and told her, this stage of the exercise will be complete when you can do this within 2 seconds, 10 times in a row. As he told her this, he made both balloons burst within about a second after he added chakra to them. Kurenai nodded, and started the exercise. Even with her control, she found the sheer concentration of trying to move her chakra in multiple ways to be rather difficult. She could manage about 7 different rotations at first, but it wasn't quite enough to make the balloon burst. Remembering Naruto's lesson about chakra memory, she immediately created 5 shadow clones, as she already had 10 trying to set fire to the tree. These 5 shadow clones each grabbed a balloon from the bucket and started trying to make them burst. After about 30 minutes, one of the clones succeeded, making the balloon burst within 6 seconds. Kurenai and the rest of her clones looked at the successful clone excitedly. The clone dispelled, passing her information on to Kurenai and her remaining clones. When they realized what the clone had done and how, the Kurenais went back to trying to make the balloons burst once more, all of them completing the exercise at different rates of time. Kurenai let the other clones dispel, and they passed their information on to her, showing her what worked and what didn't, and also giving her some ideas on how to combine certain ideas to make the balloon burst faster. By the end of that first day of training, she was able to burst a single balloon within the 2-second window. Before calling it a day, however, she grew ambitious, and decided to try her hand at bursting 2 balloons at once, just as Naruto had demonstrated. She found this to be quite a bit more difficult, as it required greater concentration in trying to rotate her chakra in 2 separate places at the same time. This would continue until about the 3rd day, when Kurenai finally succeeded in making both balloons burst within the 2-second time limit that Naruto had set for her. Naruto immediately moved her into the second part of the exercise, going into his training dojo and coming back with several bags filled with hard rubber balls. He retrieved one of the balls and showed her the objective of the second part of the exercise as within another 2-second time frame, he caused the rubber ball to boil and burst. Kurenai noted that the explosion of the rubber ball was much more powerful than the bursting of the water balloon. Naruto began to explain, this is the second stage of the exercise. Its purpose. Power. The power comes in by using your chakra to move the air in the ball in much the same way that you did to rotate the water inside the balloon. The differences in this exercise, namely the fact that the density of air is infinitesimal compared to that of water, and that the surface of the rubber ball is much tougher than that of a water balloon, will require to use more chakra, and also to generate greater force with it. Kurenai nodded her understanding as he explained so that he would not have to stop or slow down. Naruto continued to explain, we'll complete this exercise in 3 stages as well. The first stage of completion will be when you can burst the rubber ball as I just did within a 2-second time limit. The second stage, As he explained, he picked up a rubber ball in each of his hands and forcibly made them explode almost instantaneously. Will be when you can burst one in each hand within the 2-second time limit. Naruto picked up yet another ball and just held it at his side as he finished his explanation. The third stage of completion, and this is when we'll consider it mastered, is when you're able to do it within 2 seconds while boom asterisk 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 concentrating on something else, meaning you can do it almost without consciously exerting effort. Okay. The boom had been the rubber ball exploding while Naruto had been explaining to Kurenai the third stage, demonstrating that he was paying almost no attention to his adding and rotating of chakra into the ball. Kurenai nodded in response once more. Naruto, knowing Kurenai's focus on fine-tuned control of her chakra as opposed to controlling it in such a way as to generate power or force, gave her some words of warning and encouragement. Kurenai, before you begin, I want you to bear in mind that this stage is probably going to be the most difficult one for you. As far as improving chakra control and reserves goes, this will probably be like taking 3 steps forwards, 2 steps back. Your control may suffer a bit for a little while, but as we complete the third stage of the exercise, it should catch right back up. Also, one of the things that I've learned this exercise does is it forces the tenketsu points on your hands to become more flexible to be able to open wider. Basically, your hands are going to hurt a lot. But if you stick with it, your tenketsu points will adjust. It's this adaptation of the tenketsu points in your hands that will cause your control to suffer for a while. But remember what I said about chakra memory. This is one instance where your chakra memory will increase your control, because your tenketsu points will know exactly how big or small they'll need to be in order to perform this jutsu. There's also an optional fourth stage in this training that I developed as well that will help further with exact and specific control. So I would encourage you to stick with this. Believe me, it will be worth it in the end, okay? Kurenai nodded once more without hesitation, a look of determination on her face as she prepared to engage in stage 2 of this exercise that Naruto had her doing. She picked up a ball, and began adding chakra to it, only for nothing to happen before her hands started hurting very badly, just as Naruto said it would. She went ahead and made 5 shadow clones once again, each of them picking up a rubber ball and trying to force chakra into it. Thus far, no visible progress had been made on this stage, and she would frequently have to stop due to her hands involuntarily twitching at the pain caused by the expanding tenketsu points in her hands. But she kept at it, and would continue to keep at it with a vengeance, bent on mastering this training. Kurenai decided to ask the question that had been on her mind since Naruto finished his report to Tsunade concerning her training. Naruto, he replied, indicating that she had his attention. Why didn't you tell the Hokage about the chakra form manipulation exercises you're having me do? She asked with sincere curiosity. Naruto smiled knowingly as he answered her. 2 reasons. 1. The reason I gave her. 2. He trailed off, a bemused, yet knowing smile creeping across his face. You'll know once we begin working on stage 3. Wanting to know more, but knowing that Naruto had said all he would say on the matter, she simply accepted his answer, content that she would know the other reason soon enough. As they continued walking through the streets, they both began to notice people looking towards them and beginning to whisper. Naruto didn't seem to mind, but Kurenai became a bit unnerved at this. She started casting some of her own glances around the area, trying to discern what people were saying and what they might be thinking. Her head was whirring with questions. Did they think that I'm taking advantage of him? Did they think I'm some kind of cradle-robbing gold digger? I've worked so hard to earn the respect that's my due as a top kunoichi. What's going to happen as rumors start flying? Naruto, noticing Kurenai's distress, even though she hid it quite well outwardly, made an effort to take her attention off of the whispering gossip mongers. Hey, are you okay? Kurenai simply looked up at him, her eyes saying it all. She was nervous right now. Looking around, Naruto could guess as to what she was nervous about. He nodded to her in understanding, and as he started to make some very pointed stares around the area, people stopped whispering and continued about their business. Kurenai let out a breath that she hadn't realized she'd been holding as Naruto continued to lead them on their way. Out of nowhere, they heard the youthful baritone of a young man who was very familiar to the two of them. Hey Naruto. Both Naruto and Kurenai turned to see one Konohamaru Sarutobi, now 17 years old, standing just 2 inches shorter than Naruto. He walked towards them with a broad grin on his face as he greeted them both. He turned to Naruto with a look of slight consternation. So where've you been, boss? I haven't really seen you around much, lately. Yeah. Sorry about that, Konohamaru, Naruto responded as he grinned sheepishly while scratching the back of his head, but Kurenai and I have actually been working very hard for the past few weeks on a couple of projects. Konohamaru turned his gaze to Kurenai, who smiled and nodded, confirming what Naruto had said. He raised a curious eyebrow at this, but decided to shrug it off. Okay, if you say so. Well, I guess I'll see you later. I'm actually on my way to get Hanabi and take her into town, and with that he began to walk away. Naruto stopped him real quick. Hey Konohamaru. Tell you what. We're heading that way to invite Neji and Tenten to lunch with us at Akamichi Barbecue. You two want to join us? It'll give us a chance to catch up. Konohamaru smiled at the offer. Sounds like fun. I'll let Hanabi know when I get there. Okay. Oh, and while you're there, do you think you can pass it on to Neji and Tenten for us? We'll go ahead and head down to the restaurant so we can get a table. There's usually a wait at lunchtime. Sure. Konohamaru replied. I'll see you guys in a bit. And with that, he ran towards the Hyuga compound. Naruto and Kurenai changed direction and headed towards the Akamichi barbecue pit, Kurenai beginning to wonder what other surprises the day might hold for them. The moment she thought this, both she and Naruto caught a certain silver-haired Junin with his headband over his left eye and his nose in one of his older copies of Makeout Paradise. The moment he saw them, his eye widened in slight surprise and curiosity. Before he smiled and he waved at both of them, only Naruto waving back, and Kurenai looking nervous again. Kakashi commented in a curious tone, well, you two certainly make an interesting couple, don't you? Kurenai began to sputter while she blushed and looked in any direction except towards Kakashi. Naruto just tried to laugh the comment off sheepishly while responding, yeah, I guess I can see why you'd think that. We've actually been working together on a couple of projects for the past few weeks, and we've just given our first status report to Grandma Tsunade. Kakashi's visible eye began to glint with mischief. Working together, on a couple of projects, right, he drew each word out slowly in his cool drawl, lacing them with obvious sarcasm, knowing somehow that one of them would take the bait. And one of them did. Kurenai quickly exclaimed, Kakashi, there's nothing like that going on. Nothing like what, exactly? He asked with another eye smile, baiting her even further. Like, she sputtered, Naruto watching on in dismay, thinking, Kurenai, quit while you're ahead. Kurenai didn't quit, but found a way to voice her response, like anything you'd read about in that perverted book you have in your hands. Naruto face-palmed, while Kakashi's eye smile grew even more pronounced, if that was possible, as he responded, cool as ever, I never said there was, now did I? He began to freeze as he felt Kurenai's killing intent aimed in his direction. He began to stutter himself as he tried to worm his way out of this potentially life-threatening situation. Really, I never said anything like that was going on. Kurenai, now did I, Naruto. Naruto sighed and shook his head sadly. Kakashi-sensei, I'm afraid you've dug your own hole here. Kakashi immediately began to sweat, and in a sudden flash of inspiration brought on by his fight-or-flight response, he immediately turned his head to a sound that both Naruto and Kurenai knew did not exist. What was that, guy? Another youthful challenge. I'm on my way. With this, he turned to the pair that he had just finished teasing, raised two of his fingers in a friendly salute and said, well, so long, you two. Don't do anything I wouldn't do, finishing with a perverted giggle before immediately vanishing in a swirl of leaves. Kurenai just stood there fuming at Kakashi's teasing. Naruto just put a comforting hand on her shoulder and said in a resigned tone that held no surprise in it at all, just let it go, trust me, while inwardly, he thought, I don't have the heart to tell her. She walked right into that one. After a few moments, Kurenai calmed down, and they continued on their way to Akimichi Barbecue. As they got there and Naruto put his name on the waiting list for a party of 6, Kurenai received another surprise that she wasn't sure she'd welcome at that moment. Ino and Choji saw the pair and overheard Naruto placing his name on the waiting list. Choji, knowing that a party of 6 might take a while to be seated, walked up to them, Ino hot on his heels. Choji greeted them cheerfully, hey guys. What's going on? Naruto looked up, a wide grin quickly spreading from ear to ear. Choji. What's happening, man? And Ino. It's been a while. Yes, Naruto, it has been a while. A little too long if you ask me. Ino chided him, the smile never leaving her face. Ino looked over to Kurenai, raising an eyebrow in curiosity at what she was doing with Naruto. She then remembered a few weeks ago when she saw Kurenai after she had left Asuma's grave, and that faraway smile. Ino's eyes went wide at the realization, is Naruto the guy that she was smiling about that day? She thought to herself, as though she'd just struck gold after months of digging and getting nothing but rocks. Kurenai's subsequent glare told Ino all she needed to know. 1. She was likely spot on in her suspicions. 2. She'd best keep them to herself if she knew what was good for her. While Ino was a major gossip hound, she wasn't stupid. There were some things that just weren't worth sharing, not because they weren't really valuable, this was gold in Ino's mind, but because the fear of possible repercussions that might follow far outweighed the potential value, and Kurenai looked like she meant business. Ino simply pursed her lips together, unable to help a small smile, putting her thumb and forefinger together and drawing them across her lips in a, my lips are sealed, gesture. Kurenai, softening her glare somewhat, simply nodded at the girl, who nodded back. Choji was talking to Naruto, hey Naruto, if you're putting your name on the list for a party of 6, you'll be waiting a while. Ino and I can take you to the private room in the back where we're going to be eating. It'll fit at least 12. We can get you seated right away and just have the others sent back when they get here, if you don't mind joining us. Realizing the convenience of this, Naruto agreed, okay, why not? Kurenai. Kurenai smiled and shrugged as she said, no objections, here, before turning her gaze back to Ino, full glare coming back on to let her know that she would not tolerate any funny business on her part during the meal. Ino simply nodded and smiled again, though this time she started to sweat a little bit. Choji unwittingly broke all tension as he exclaimed, okay, everyone. Right this way. Choji led the way as Ino and Kurenai followed him. Naruto left instructions with the hostess to send Neji, Tenten, Konohamaru and Hanabi back to the room upon their arrival. He then followed Choji and the girls into the back room. As they all sat down and ordered, they began to make small talk with each other and catch up. Ino currently worked with her father, Anko and Ibiki in the T&I department, while Choji was currently a Junin sensei for a Genin squad. Of course, they both helped to run their families' businesses as well, Ino with the flower shop and Choji here at the restaurant. Choji and Ino had been dating each other for the past several months, with Ino hinting at a desire for engagement, while Choji, surprisingly enough, didn't seem uncomfortable with the idea. Naruto and Kurenai both found themselves curious as to just how close Choji might be to proposing to Ino. While Ino and Choji were catching Naruto and Kurenai up, the four people that they had been waiting for were shown into the room by the hostess. Neji Hyuga was currently in his clan's traditional robes with his forehead protector around his forehead, smiling and greeting the four who were sitting at the table. Tenten Hyuga was at his side, her warm smile and unusually cheerful demeanor indicating that pregnancy seemed to suit her quite well. She was currently wearing Hyuga clan robes herself, having been married into the prestigious clan, her hair still in the same two buns that she always wore them in on each side of her head. Behind them were Konohamaru Sarutobi, who also greeted Naruto, Kurenai, Choji and Ino in a cheerful manner. He was pushing a wheelchair in which sat Hanabi Hyuga, her thin and gaunt appearance indicative of her long-term confinement to the wheelchair. Naruto couldn't help but remember the day that Konohamaru had informed him of Hanabi's condition, and of Hiyashi's offer to betroth his youngest daughter to the Sarutobi clan heir. Naruto heard a knock on the front door of his newly completed home. He hadn't yet built the outer walls or applied any perimeter seals to the property, so at the moment, anyone could still walk up to his front door and announce their presence the old-fashioned way. He reached the door and opened it to find Konohamaru, looking anxious and a bit lost, as though he didn't know what to do at the moment. Before Naruto could ask, Konohamaru started hesitantly, "Hey boss, you got a few minutes?" Naruto frowned in concern at his friend before answering, "Yeah, sure. Come on in," as he gestured Konohamaru inside the house. Konohamaru entered, and Naruto closed the door behind him. Naruto then quickly went to fill a couple of glasses with water as he brought them to one of the sofas in his living room, which is where Konohamaru had sat himself down. Naruto set his glass of water down on the coffee table in front of the sofa and then sat at the end opposite his friend before voicing his thoughts. "What's going on, Ko? You look like you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders." Konohamaru sighed tiredly at this. "I feel like I am. I need to talk to you about something real important." "Okay, shoot. Do you know what's happened over at the Hyuga clan?" Naruto raised an eyebrow in confusion at this. Konohamaru responded, "I'll take that as a no. Naruto, Hinata and Hanabi just had a clan-sanctioned duel to determine who would be the next head of the Hyuga clan 2 days ago." Naruto's eyes narrowed both in thought and surprise. He hadn't realized that the succession of leadership for the Hyuga was so close at hand. He waited for Konohamaru to continue, which he soon did. "That's not the worst of it. He faltered for a moment before continuing, "I don't know all the details, but I do know that Hinata's now the official heir again, and when I saw Hanabi, she looked as though she'd been beaten to within an inch of her life." Naruto gasped at this. Having seen Hinata's newfound brutality on the battlefield firsthand, he'd had a sinking feeling in his gut that something like this might happen sooner or later. Under a clan-sanctioned duel, particularly in the Hyuga clan, no attacks were barred, and because such events were considered clan business, there was nothing illegal about one of the participants maiming or even killing the other. The Hokage herself could do nothing should one of these occur. Naruto slowly asked, "How is Hanabi?" Konohamaru closed his eyes, sighing tiredly and sadly, hanging his head and shaking it in resigned anguish. "She's been unconscious since. Their doctors say that they don't know when she'll wake up. They tell us that." Konohamaru faltered again, fighting to keep his wits about him. Naruto encouraged his surrogate little brother, "It's okay, Ko. Take as much time as you need." Konohamaru took a few deep breaths to calm himself down. Once he was in enough control of himself to speak evenly again, he continued, Hanabi's days as a shinobi are over. Hinata beat her so thoroughly that, she'll never be able to walk again without assistance because she'll never have the equilibrium to hold herself up for long. She'll never fight or mold chakra again, and she'll spend most of her time, confined to a wheelchair. Konohamaru shed a single tear as he finished. For the rest of her life, there's nothing they can do for her beyond what they've already done. Naruto found himself in shock, and was getting angrier by the second as Konohamaru explained what he had been told Hinata had done to her younger sister. He had known for quite a while that Hinata had finally gotten sick of the constant abuse and condescension that Hanabi and her father always sent her way. Being born with a kind, gentle and caring spirit, this treatment had simply hurt and saddened her at first, but with the onset of war, and the constant pressure that she faced on the battlefield, they had the misfortune of picking a bad night to double-team her and let them know of their displeasure at her disgraceful performance on the battlefield, this despite the fact that her team had come home alive if a little worse for wear, and having accomplished their mission, their team of 4 killing 20 white Zetsu clones while they were at it. Hinata had finally blown up in anger at them, saying some rather harsh words to them both, not allowing either to get a word in edgewise before storming off to find Naruto, who she was still involved with at the time. Months later, after Naruto and Hinata had broken up and the war had been won by the Alliance, peace treaties, alliances and agreements were signed. The allied shinobi forces disbanded, and all ninja returned to their home villages. 1 month after they had gotten back found Naruto and Konohamaru in the conversation they were currently having. Apparently Hinata's hatred towards her father and sister had only grown in the time since her blow-up, and this combined with the things she was doing on the battlefield only served to greatly darken her overall mentality and temperament. When they had gotten back to Konoha, Hiashi ordered a clan-sanctioned duel between Hinata and Hanabi in order to test Hanabi's skills and hopefully shut Hinata up, as she had become quite the disrespectful backtalker in the last few months since her blow-up. The duel didn't go so well for Hiashi or Hanabi. Hinata not only defeated Hanabi, she broke Hanabi, she maimed Hanabi, she brutalized Hanabi. This was the story Hiashi had told Konohamaru just before leading the boy to his office, leaving a still comatose Hanabi in the Hyuga medical ward. On the way, they actually crossed paths with Hinata, who glanced first at Konohamaru and then at her father before her face broke into a cold smirk, her eyes hard and cruel. Hiashi only closed his eyes and hung his head, sighing. If Konohamaru didn't know any better, he would think that Hiashi was ashamed, not of Hinata but of himself. Hinata, upon seeing his reaction, turned back to Konohamaru, who gave an involuntary shiver with the uneasiness he felt at seeing this woman who had once been so kind and warm. Hinata abruptly turned in a different direction and went on her way, at which point Hiashi continued to lead Konohamaru to his office. Once they got there, Hiashi closed the door and made Konohamaru a proposal, in order to save Hanabi from getting the caged bird seal, but more to simply get her out of the Hyuga clan compound where life was bound to get much harder for her. If Konohamaru would agree, Hiashi would promise Hanabi's hand in marriage to him by contract, the terms of which were to be completely fulfilled on Hanabi's 16th birthday. Konohamaru was rightly unsure about the proposal at first, but the more Hiashi put stipulations into the contract that were in the young Sarutobi's favor, the more Konohamaru found it hard to resist. At the same time, though, he didn't want to enter into such an agreement lightly, so he asked for a few days at most to think it over and give Hiashi an answer. And that's why I'm here, Naruto, Konohamaru summarized before finishing. I don't know what to do with this, and I needed the advice of a man that I trust implicitly. Can you give me a little help, or at least a little perspective here? What do you think I should do? Naruto felt for his friend. After a few moments of thought, Naruto asked Konohamaru, "How well do you understand the terms of this contract?" Konohamaru answered readily enough, "I'm familiar enough with general legalese to be able to read and understand the fine print. Basically, Hiyashi's trying to save Hanabi from being branded with the caged bird seal, and this is the best way he can think to do it. As I said, he wrote the terms of the contract very heavily in my favor, and he even familiarized me with all of the termination clauses so that I wouldn't feel like I was being roped in. I took the time to read what was there myself, and it was exactly as he said it was." Naruto hummed in thought for a few moments. He knew Konohamaru well enough to know that he had the same natural talent for politics and reading fine print that his grandfather had. Of all the things that could be said about the boy, it couldn't be denied that he had a good, solid head on his shoulders, and a strong intellect. Naruto decided that a little more information was needed as he asked, "How well do you know the girl?" Konohamaru sighed, "Not real well, to be honest. What I have seen, I don't like. She's as stuck up and as full of herself as Neji used to be. But still, I'd like to be helpful if I can." Hiyashi went as far as to say, "Konohamaru, I need your help," and he seemed desperate, which really isn't like him at all. Naruto had to agree with that. Hiyashi Hyuga was not exactly the most humble of men, and for him to express even mild desperation, and to ask for help in such a manner, would indicate that he was sincere in his request. After a few moments of consideration of the matter in this light, Naruto gave his advice, If there are ways of getting out of it easily enough, you can do that if things don't work out. If you want to help, go ahead and sign it, making sure that you read the fine print again to make sure that nothing was added that you don't want there, and then reread it to make sure that you didn't miss anything. Her 16th birthday is 3 years out, there's time to get to know her, and who knows? She may surprise you. She may be as arrogant and egotistical as Neji used to be, but, look at how Neji is now. Who's to say that Hanabi can't change for the better as well?" Konohamaru still looked unsure, but eventually came to the realization that he wasn't going to be any more sure than he was at this moment. He thanked his surrogate big brother for his advice and decided that he would follow it. He had returned to the Hyuga compound that very same day to sign the agreement. Hanabi Hyuga, also dressed in Hyuga female clan robes much the same way Tenten was, radiated an aura of grace and nobility, even from her wheelchair. This aura, coupled with the warmth and humility that she now possessed as a result of what she had learned from her condition, and the circumstances behind how she came to be impaired, gave her a countenance that anyone would consider quite beautiful to behold. She smiled and greeted everyone in the room warmly and with much enthusiasm as Konohamaru rolled her over to the table, picked her up bridal style, and gently sat her down in the chair that he had just pulled out for her, taking the seat next to her own. Neji and Tenten took 2 empty seats to Hanabi's left. Naruto briefly reflected back on the courtship of Konohamaru and Hanabi. Remembering that Hanabi had been somewhat withdrawn at first, but somehow Konohamaru knew how to draw her out of her shell, it had been gratifying to watch the two of them grow closer. Konohamaru was always patient with her, yet very encouraging to her at the same time, believing in her, and always helping her to feel like she could push her limits, but it was okay if she fell, or if she wasn't necessarily up to it at a particular point in time. It was thanks to Konohamaru that Hanabi could actually stand for 20 minutes at a time without assistance before her equilibrium would begin to sway, where when she had first woken up after her crippling beating, the very act of trying to stand caused her to experience vertigo. Hanabi had also in a sense built a life for herself outside of the Hyuga clan, something that her position as the likely heir, along with the overprotective nature of her father towards his youngest daughter, had prevented her from doing, or even wanting her to do. As Hanabi and Konohamaru grew closer, Konohamaru's friends became Hanabi's friends as well. They would both have dinner with Naruto, Iruka and Anko fairly regularly, either at Naruto's home or in Iruka and Anko's home. Hanabi found it rather ironic that she enjoyed her life now more as a cripple than she ever had as a clan heiress. Hanabi's birthday was only a few short weeks away, upon which she and Konohamaru Sarutobi would become husband and wife. Konohamaru, of course, had asked Naruto to stand up with him, where Hanabi had asked Anko Yumino to be her attendant, which she was more than happy to do. All of their friends were looking forward to the event, scheduled to take place in the Hyuga compound, to be performed by the Hokage herself. It would be a small, simple, intimate gathering of friends and family to celebrate the union of two who love each other, and even though it was probably for the best, it would be a little sadder with Hinata's refusal to celebrate it with them. Hinata had made it clear that she wanted nothing to do with the wedding or with Hanabi. Even with this little dampener, however, the two could not be happier with their upcoming nuptials, and the support of the family that they both treasured, both blood relations and those who were sitting here with them. Their waiter brought Naruto's mind back to the present as he took the orders of the 4 new arrivals, as well as bringing several pitchers of water and tea so that they could all begin to refresh themselves. Once all orders had been taken, the party of 8 became a veritable cacophony of speech, laughter, and other outbursts that simply told all who might overhear them that they were a happy and joyful group. Food was brought and thoroughly enjoyed by all, and they just talked about the goings-on in their lives, enjoying an intimate time as friends. Kurenai, being significantly older than all of them, found herself having to try a little harder to relate to the group of people she found herself sitting and eating with. Naruto, Neji and Tenten, thankfully, had all picked up on this, and had made special efforts to help her to feel more at home and included. Within half an hour, Kurenai was one of the gang, at least for now. As they had all finished lunch, Naruto remembered that Victory Day, this is what the day that the allied shinobi nations had won the war had come to be called, and in Konoha at least, it was made an official holiday, was coming up within the next couple of weeks. He took a moment to make an announcement while everyone was still there. Hey everyone, on Victory Day, I'm having a dinner party. You're all invited. Don't worry about bringing anything, just come hungry, but I would like to know who'll come so I'll know how much food to have for everyone. Neji and Tenten readily accepted the invitation. Of course, they loved regular meals with Naruto and Kurenai. She was over there so much now that it was easy to forget that she didn't in fact live there. Konohamaru and Hanabi did as well, as they felt that it had been too long since they'd had dinner with Naruto. Choji and Ino expressed enthusiasm at the invite, but they would both have to check to see if they were needed at their respective businesses that day, Choji especially. They promised Naruto that they would get back with him. Noting that Kurenai had not given him an answer, he turned to her with a curious eyebrow raised. She responded to the unanswered question, Naruto, of course I'll be there. But, if you'd let me, I'd like to help you host it. Naruto's eyebrow shot even higher even as both of his eyebrows came together in bemusement and mild confusion. Kurenai, knowing that he was silently asking why, gave him her reasons. Naruto, I am at your home so often, I almost feel like it's mine as well, and I haven't had the chance to play hostess for a dinner party in a while. Also, and I know I've said this before, but you've already done so much for me, and I would like to give back to you in some capacity, and this is one way in which I can do that. So, may I help you host your dinner party? Naruto sighed resignedly and nodded. He knew he wouldn't be able to talk her out of it. Truth be told, he found the idea of having her assistance in getting everything set up and in helping people feel welcome in his home to be rather nice, almost natural, even natural. Where'd that come from, I wonder? He thought to himself, dismissing the thought as quickly as it came. They all left the restaurant after Naruto paid the bills of those he said he would and went their separate ways. Kurenai, having no training with Naruto scheduled today, and also told not to train today on his orders, left Naruto to head home and take care of some personal business she'd set today aside to get to. Naruto, having a few more people to invite, went around town to speak to them. Naruto's first stop was the Inuzuka compound to invite Kiba. As he knocked, a woman that Naruto was rather familiar with answered. She had the typical red fang tattoos of the Inuzuka on her face, as well as some other distinctive features, a feral mop of brown hair on her head that made her quite attractive in a primal way, though it had lightened by a few shades over the years, and a scar across the bridge of her nose, much like Iruka's, but hers started at the bridge and slanted on a slight downward tilt across the right side of her face. This was an injury she received during the war, and it was something that she regarded as a badge of honor, as did those who knew how she got it. She had saved the lives of her teammates by fighting off several enemies while battlefield medics patched them up, and in the process, one enemy too many had attacked her, swiping her across the face with a kunai. Even bleeding profusely to the point of being almost unable to see, she continued fighting on. Fortunately, reinforcements came as she began to feel faint from blood loss. When she had finally passed out, her reinforcements had arrived and she had been whisked away to safety. Naruto smiled at Sume Inuzuka, a woman he had great respect for. They began to just talk for a couple of minutes before Naruto informed him of the purpose for his visit. Sorry, Naruto. Kiba just started border patrol last week, so he's out of town for the next 3, said Sume in response to Naruto's inquiry. Thank you, Lady Sume. I appreciate you letting me know, and if you want to come, you're more than welcome, said Naruto graciously. Thanks, pup. Who knows? I might just stop in. Absolutely. I think Kurenai would be more than happy to see you there. Sume, knowing of Kurenai's apprenticeship and training under Naruto, gave a wry smile at this, causing Naruto to laugh somewhat nervously at her implication as she responded in a rather suggestive manner, Kurenai, huh? Well, then, I'll be sure to be there. With the two of you, it could promise to be an entertaining evening. Naruto gave another nervous laugh before taking his leave of Sume and her subtle teasing. His next stop was the Nara compound to see his newlywed friends Shikamaru and Temari Nara. Naruto had been saddened to miss Shikamaru and Temari's wedding, as he had been on border patrol at the time, so he couldn't make it back, such was the life of a shinobi. This would be the first time that Naruto will have seen either one of them since they got back from their honeymoon a month ago. As he entered the grounds, he saw Shikamaru there cloud-gazing. He greeted his friend as a casual manner, Shikamaru returning the greeting in just as casual a manner. After taking some time to catch up themselves, with Shikamaru showing honest surprise at Naruto's telling of Kurenai's training and apprenticeship, Naruto extended his invitation to Shikamaru. Well, free food's never a drag, and even if it was, Temari would pull me along anyway, said Shikamaru lazily, his usual friendly smirk in place. Of course she would, Shika. Say, where is Temari anyway? She's in town shopping with my mom, so I get a little peace and quiet for a while. It'll be a drag here again, soon enough. Naruto responded rather bemusedly, okay, then. So, I'll see you guys in 2 weeks. It's good to see that married life agrees with you, my friend. I've got a couple more rounds to make, so I'll see you around, said Naruto, who was seeing his friend for the first time since Shikamaru got back from his honeymoon a month ago. Sure thing, Naruto. See ya. Naruto knew that Tsunade wouldn't be able to attend, as she would be hosting the public party for Victory Day, making speeches, greeting people and such. Shizune, Likewise would be attending Tsunade as always. Kakashi wouldn't show even if invited. He just wasn't one for socializing outside the professional realm. Yamato, back in Anbu, so he'd be patrolling the village and keeping the peace. Guy would spend his day either in seclusion or at the memorial stone, remembering the life and mourning the death of his most beloved student, Rock Lee. Tuki and Ayame would be keeping the stand open late that night, as Victory Day would be one of their busiest days of the year. Knowing all of this, Naruto only had one more stop to make, Iruka and Anko's place. Reaching their apartment, he knocked on the door, which was answered by Anko, who smiled wide upon seeing him. "Hey, Naruto, how are ya?" Naruto smiled back. "I'm great, Anko. How are you?" "Doing great myself," she replied jovially before stepping back. "Come on in, little bro." Naruto accepted the invitation and stepped into her home. Anko led him to her couch as Iruka entered the living room from the kitchen with a tray of drinks and glasses. "Hi Naruto," he exclaimed just as jovially as Anko had before, pouring from pitchers into 3 ice-filled glasses, handing one to Naruto and another to his wife. Iruka and Anko then sat on the love seat that was adjacent to the couch that Naruto was on. Iruka started, "It's great to see you. What brings you by?" Naruto answered, "Well, I'm having a dinner party for Victory Day this year. I'd like you two to come." Before Iruka could accept, Anko broke in slyly and playfully, "Oh, you would, huh?" She raised a suggestive eyebrow as she continued, "And is Kurenai going to be there?" Naruto simply rolled his eyes at her antics, used to her teasing of him over this topic by now. "Yes, she'll be there. She actually asked me if she could help me host it, if you must know." Anko's expression became even more teasing. "Is that so? Wow, only a month in and she already thinks of the place as home." Iruka couldn't help but chuckle at this. Naruto simply rolled his eyes again, but this time a faint flush adorned his cheeks. Naruto cursed Anko in his mind for knowing exactly what buttons to push with him. Iruka broke back in, sparing Naruto from further teasing. "Thanks for the invite, Naruto. We'll be there." Naruto nodded and once again found himself quickly taking leave to avoid a woman's teasing. All invitations handed out, Naruto headed back to his home to tend to some of his own business, or in this particular case, businesses. When he arrived at his property, he noticed that there was a scroll on the front lawn. Seeing where it laid, and knowing nobody could get into his property unless he specifically permitted them to, or that only scrolls with specific identifying seals on them could penetrate his detection perimeter without being incinerated, he could only assume it had been dropped by a messenger hawk from an individual of no small importance to him. As he walked closer to it, he noticed that it had the Fire Daimyo's seal. Seeing this, Naruto hurried into his home and went into his office, sitting at his desk and opening the scroll, reading its contents. "Dear Naruto, I hope this letter finds you well. Shijimi sends her love and regards as well. It has been some time since we've had the pleasure of your company, and we are both finding that we miss you, and we look forward to getting a chance to see you once more, son. The reason I am writing to you is to ask you for a special favor. I am currently organizing a grand ball that is to take place in 3 months' time, to celebrate Shijimi's 50th birthday. It is going to be a rather lavish affair, and I have already reserved the conference center at the Daimyo's Palace Resort outside of Tanzaku Town. I would be honored and quite grateful if you would personally host the ball. The date of the event will be May 7th. Please let me know if you will be able to do this for us. Sincerely yours, Shin Karagate, Feudal Lord, Land of Fire. P.S. I do hope, and I know that Shijimi has even greater hope, that you will come escorting a lady on your arm." Naruto chuckled a bit at the postscript. Yet more teasing about his romantic life, he knew they meant well and wanted what was best for him. In the 2 years that he could call the Fire Daimyo and his wife friends, they had quickly become more like parents to him, or at least like a close aunt and uncle. He pulled out a scroll, grabbed a pen, and began to write his acceptance of Lord Shin's request. As he finished his reply, he sealed the scroll and headed to the Hokage Tower in order to commission a messenger hawk to deliver the scroll to the daimyo in the capital. Naruto got an early start on getting his home ready for his guests. Wanting to make sure that everything was great, he began setting up all kinds of equipment in his kitchen. Also, per Kurenai's suggestion and coaxing, this would also be the first time where he would perform for an audience of more than one. He knew just the piece that he wanted to play as well, so in addition to making sure that his kitchen was properly equipped, he also made sure to set his studio up with enough seating for everyone that he was expecting. It was just shy of 2 in the afternoon when Kurenai showed up, letting herself in as Naruto had set the seals on both the front gate and the front door to recognize her chakra signature. After greeting each other in their normal fashion, Kurenai immediately began to coordinate with Naruto in getting food made. She also took charge of arranging the silverware, china, and other items that Naruto would need to serve the feast that they were creating. Naruto reflected on the past 7 weeks or so that he and Kurenai had started there, whatever it was, training, apprenticeship, partnership, friendship. Their relationship was all of these things, and it was a relationship that Naruto had grown to treasure, more than any other relationship he had ever had. In addition, the more honest Naruto was with himself, the more he realized that he wished it was something deeper still, but he wasn't sure if Kurenai would welcome that particular discussion. Afraid of either making her uncomfortable or hurting her feelings somehow, he thought it best to leave it to her to bring that topic up, at least for the time being. Little did he know, however, that Kurenai was having thoughts along a similar vein. Kurenai enjoyed working with Naruto in his kitchen. It was a chance for both of them to just be friends, without being partners in a project, or trainer, trainee or master, apprentice. It occurred to Kurenai as she thought this that Naruto, in the last several weeks, had actually become her best friend, and she was almost certain that Naruto had similar sentiments towards her. They certainly did enjoy the time they spent together, even if Kurenai did sometimes grumble at the torture that Naruto called training, and she looked forward to every moment she could spend with him. Naruto's presence just made her happy, and her feelings for him had only grown deeper and stronger as the weeks had gone by. The fears that she had were still there. Being a kunoichi, she was still worried about her reputation as a professional and as a person in being seen with a man who was almost 15 years her junior, even now. There were still the friendly jibes from her colleagues that, even though she knew were given in good fun, still raised certain questions. Would she be seen as a cradle-robbing gold digger by the village? Would she have to continue putting up with those whispers and glances that were becoming more and more commonplace, and even a few discreet glares that started coming her way, especially from the women in the village? Would this cause her to lose credibility as a professional and as a ninja in the eyes of not only the rest of Konoha's shinobi force, but with the village civilians as well? Even worse, would she lose credibility in the eyes of potential clientele to the village, causing her services to be devalued and placed in less demand? As time had gone by, however, these fears of others' thoughts had begun to fade as she saw how Naruto would defend and stand up for her, making people turn away from them with just a gaze. That had not only made her feel special, but if she was honest with herself, thinking about Naruto defending her honor like that made her stomach quiver and her heart start beating faster. And even though she was having to put up with glares and whispers that were beginning to irk her to no end from a lot of other women, she had yet to see a change in the regard that her fellows had for her as a pro. The gap in age became less and less of an issue for her as well, at least with respect to how she felt about him, as a shinobi and a man. She had come to realize that one of the unaccounted benefits of Naruto's shadow clone training, both in his shinobi skills and in all the other skills he acquired, had been that it gave him a lot of life experience, essentially aging his mind to the point where she could talk to him more like an equal than she would talk to, say, her former student Kiba. The fears she had concerning Naruto's career, such as whether or not having a relationship with her would affect his chances at realizing his dream, or if he might end up losing the respect of his own fellows in the village for being involved with someone who could be seen as a cradle-robbing gold digger, were nowhere near as strong as they once were. She had seen that even if people didn't like the fact that Naruto and Kurenai were seen together, probably more out of jealousy than anything else, they respected Naruto enough to keep their opinions to themselves, and if they didn't respect him enough, they certainly feared him enough, if his ability to stop people from whispering and pointing with a mere look was any indicator. Her fears about forgetting Asuma had begun to fade slightly, as she realized that when she thought about him now, she smiled, remembering the good man he was, and the good times that they had together. She was even comfortable talking with Naruto about him now. She knew that, while she might still miss him from time to time, his absence no longer crippled her emotionally or kept her from enjoying her life, and she had Naruto to thank for that. This, however, was a mixed blessing to Kurenai. While she was certainly happy not to be in a constant state of either mourning or depression, there was still that lingering question in her mind of whether she was truly ready in her mind to go where her heart was going, both in regards to moving past Asuma and towards Naruto. It was this question, and the questions that came with it, that she believed would be the hardest for her to wrestle through, if she were to get involved with Naruto, and even if they married and had children. What would she do if somehow, she lost him to a mission? What if they lost one of their own children? What would happen to them, individually and as a couple? Hey, Kurenai, can you get me the roasting pot, please? Asked Naruto, pulling her out of her thoughts. Kurenai brought herself back to her enjoyment of working in Naruto's kitchen as she smiled and retrieved the roasting pot that he asked for and brought it to him. Thank you, he responded, as he took the pot from her. She watched as he put a 12-pound marinated slab of lamb into the pot. She noticed that the huge hunk of meat had several devices sticking out of it that looked almost like thermometers used to measure the internal temperature of a slab of meat that was being cooked, but instead of temperature reading instruments, their surfaces were covered with seals, fire chakra conversion seal arrays, if Kurenai recognized them correctly. Naruto grabbed several pre-cut containers of fresh vegetables and poured them into the pot alongside the lamb, which he then topped off with the remaining marinade that he had basted the lamb in. He opened his oven, which had been preheated to the correct temperature, and placed the pot inside. Closing the oven door, he began to clean the kitchen up. That slab of lamb should be done by dinner time, he said with some pride and a hint of excitement. I'm guessing here, but are those seal arrays supposed to help in cooking it faster and more evenly? Asked Kurenai. Why yes, they are, Naruto responded with a smile. I'll say you've come quite a ways in your fuinjutsu education. Thank you, she said with a wry smile, adding playfully, one of these days, you'll actually let me paint a seal or two of my very own, right, master? One of these days, Grasshopper, one of these days, said Naruto just as playfully, trailing off with a wry smile of his own and leaving it at that. The pair continued to prepare other dishes that they would be serving once everyone started to arrive, continuing to just talk about anything and everything in the comfortable manner that they had both become accustomed to with each other. As they were talking, Kurenai started to look out the kitchen window into the rear grounds. She noticed the one building that she had never been inside before, Naruto's backyard workshop. Naruto. Yeah, I don't know why this hasn't occurred to me before now, but, you've never shown me that workshop that you have out back, there. Naruto frowned in surprised thought at this. Really? Kurenai simply shook her head in the negative. Naruto responded, never realized that. I thought I had. Kurenai shook her head once more. Nope, never did. Well, then, said Naruto, with an exaggerated gesture indicating that she should follow him, would you like the tour of the backyard workshop? Kurenai raised her hands to her mouth in just as exaggerated a fashion, gasped and said in a girly voice, really? Really? Exclaimed Naruto with a playful goofy grin as he walked to the back sliding door in a manly man fashion. Oh goody. I get to see the workshop. Kurenai responded with a playful grin of her own, bouncing along after him in a girly girl fashion while clapping her hands together. Naruto led her into his workshop, and Kurenai, in her surprise at what she saw, immediately dropped the girly girl act. The seals she saw in this workshop were similar in nature to the seals that adorned the walls and ceiling of the training dojo, which Kurenai was now able to recognize as space-time seal arrays. This was one area of fuinjutsu that Kurenai found to be quite fascinating, the ability to create additional space within a confined pre-existing space. The seal arrays in the workshop, however, were quite a bit more complex than the seals in the dojo were, as the space that they created was much larger. On the outside, the building was only about 400 square feet. Inside, however, the room that she was standing in had to be upwards of 10,000 square feet. Most of the room consisted of carpentry and construction tools and equipment, much of which looked like it hadn't been used in a while. Various table saws, sanders, drills, and all other kinds of machines and tools for working with wood, stone, drywall, etc. All along the walls were the various hand tools that any carpenter or construction worker would need to do a job. Naruto allowed Kurenai to look around the workshop for a few minutes before grabbing her attention and leading her to his favorite little corner of the workshop, his forge. This little space right here is where I do my favorite physical work, he said with great pride as he showed her his blacksmith's furnace also covered with seals and arrays of various types, anvil and vise, along with the many different pairs of tongs and hammers that he used to create all kinds of metal masterpieces, mostly his ninja tools, such as kunai, shuriken, and Hiraishin kunai. He liked to have a backup seal in case he found himself in a jam and couldn't plant a seal himself, but he had also forged a few top-quality blades of his own, here. Kurenai also noticed a few leather smocks and some protective gear hanging up on one of the walls. And when we get you to Kenjutsu, Kurenai, I'll forge a blade for you as well, he said as he finished explaining a few of the tools, as well as some of the creations that had this little workshop as their place of origin. Naruto himself had 2 katanas and a ninjutsu that he used on missions, each of them made from top-quality steel, and even etched with a few seals of Naruto's own design for additional augmentation and strength. All 3 blades had been forged here. Kurenai just looked at Naruto in awe, thinking, other than genjutsu, is there anything that this amazing man can't do? She couldn't help the growing blush on her face as she began to imagine Naruto working that forge without a shirt on in the heat of the furnace, covered in sweat. Kurenai, reel it in or he'll notice, she thought to herself quickly. Thankfully for her, Naruto had been pointing to and sharing about different features of his forge, causing her flush to go unnoticed. As Naruto finished explaining the seals of the furnace to Kurenai, fire chakra converter arrays for heat, wind chakra conversion arrays to augment the heat, making the fire hotter for tougher jobs, and water chakra conversion arrays to cool the forge down so that the entire workshop didn't catch on fire by accident, he brought her back into the house. Noting the time, he realized that people were going to start showing up in about an hour. Seeing as both of them were covered in various forms of kitchen gook, Naruto told Kurenai that she could use one of the guest bathrooms to freshen up, knowing that she had brought a change of clothes with her in a sealing scroll. Knowing also that she knew where the linens and towels were, Naruto excused himself and went into the master bath to clean himself up and make himself presentable for his guests. After about 20 minutes, he came out of his room wearing a black long-sleeve button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up to mid-forearm, pleated khaki slacks with a brown leather belt, tan socks and brown snakeskin shoes that matched the color of his belt. He went back downstairs to do some final cleaning up so that his house was in immaculate condition when everyone arrived. Half an hour later, Naruto's eyes widened slightly as Kurenai made her appearance. She was wearing one of the outfits that she had bought from Aina a few weeks back when she and Naruto were at Kasumi's, the clothing store that Naruto was a partner in. She was wearing the same cream-colored blouse that Aina had been wearing that night, along with the same style of tight cotton pants, but instead of black, Kurenai's were charcoal gray. She was wearing the same high-heel low-top black boots that Aina had been wearing, adding a good 4 inches to her already impressive 5 feet 9, evening her out at about 6 feet 1. Unlike Aina, however, Kurenai's kunoichi body filled the outfit out in ways that Aina's civilian body never would or could. On top of this, she had made herself up slightly differently. She was wearing a light rouge on her lips, just enough mascara to accentuate her eyelashes, and an eyeshadow that was a light brown instead of the normal blue, and blended in with her natural skin tone, giving her face a much more natural-looking beauty. Her hair was still in the same wild, seemingly unkempt style that it was normally in, but a few locks were running in front of her shoulders as well as flowing down her back. Upon seeing her, Naruto couldn't help but blush. Kurenai, seeing that Naruto was just standing there gawking, decided to tease him a little, turning her head just a little to the left while keeping her gaze pointed at him, smiling flirtatiously and asking in a sly tone, "So I guess that means you approve, huh, Naruto?" Naruto squeezed his eyes shut and shook his head before chuckling sheepishly and scratching the back of his head at his embarrassment at staring. Yeah, sorry, didn't mean to stare. It's quite alright, said Kurenai, still in a bemused tone. It's actually rather flattering that I can attract a man your age. Naruto muttered under his breath, "Oh, Kurenai, you have no idea." Kurenai, unable to make out what he said, asked, "What was that?" "Oh, nothing," he responded rather quickly before the perimeter seal alert system announced the arrival of their first guest. Naruto had pre-programmed the seal arrays on the front gate to allow certain persons entrance to the grounds for the evening so that the people coming to his party could simply walk up to the front door and knock. "Well, Kurenai, it would appear that it's time for us to play host and hostess." "Yes, so it would seem. I'll take the front door and greet everyone while you get drinks ready." "On it," Naruto replied as he dashed off into the kitchen, preparing trays for serving sake. Shochu and vodka. Kurenai had supplied these water, hot tea and raspberry aid. Kurenai answered the front door, opening it to greet the first guests of the evening, Iruka and Anko. "Hello, you two," she greeted with a warm smile as she hugged them both. Anko decided that it was time for a little teasing, asking with a wide yet wry grin, "Good evening, Lady Namikaze. May we enter your lovely home?" Kurenai's response was to glare at Anko. Iruka decided to join in the teasing, "Hey Naruto." He yelled, hoping Naruto heard him. "Yeah," came a yell from the direction of the kitchen. "The lady of the house is making us feel less than welcome." He yelled back in an overly playful and facetious manner. Kurenai then directed her glare at both of them, also increasing its intensity, making them both briefly wonder if they might have gone just a bit too far. Their fears were laid to rest as Naruto walked out of the kitchen with the sake tray, an overly grim frown on his face, and an obviously playful mock-indignant tone to his voice. "Well, that just won't do. Lady of the house." Kurenai's glare turned into a wide-eyed surprised gape as she turned to regard her fellow host for the evening as Naruto continued, putting the sake tray down. You must make our guests feel welcome. I will not suffer the reputation of being a bad host, nor of my lady being a bad hostess. He finished, balling his hands into fists and putting them on his hips, giving Kurenai a mock-angry glare. Kurenai sighed in resignation. I've just been played. I have to remember who I'm dealing with here, she thought, when suddenly her lips began to creep into a small, wry smirk, but maybe two can play this little game. My dear lord and master, she said, in a playful, almost seductive tone with half-lidded eyes, it is my deepest regret to inform you that I cannot comply with such a request. You will therefore have to punish me. Iruka and Anko both looked on in interest at this, curious as to how it would play out. Naruto, not missing a beat, responded in the same mock-angry tone, so be it, then. I will go to my forge and light the furnace in order to prepare the hot irons. Kurenai began to sputter in shock at this. The Yuminos both raised their eyebrows in amusement at this. Ew, kinky, Anko exclaimed in the spirit of exaggeration that the four of them had taken on, causing Kurenai's sputters to become even more pronounced. Iruka decided to join in with his wife, but directed his jab at Naruto. Now remember, Naruto, careful how hot you make the irons. You want to cause just enough pain to bring an arousing reaction. This brought Kurenai's sputters to a stop, and she turned to Anko and Iruka with a low growl. Naruto wisely decided that enough was enough and interrupted the rapidly deteriorating atmosphere with a cough. Right, well then, I'll just bring the rest of the drinks in and everyone can help themselves. And with this, Naruto excused himself to the kitchen. Kurenai turned on the husband and wife pair that were her two best friends after Naruto, and started in a low, but hissing tone, belaying her annoyance. Just what do you two think you're doing? Iruka took this moment to excuse himself and help Naruto in the kitchen. Anko simply stared back at Kurenai with an overly innocent frown of confusion. Who, me? She asked as she pointed at herself. Kurenai's glare came back on full force, her voice still in the same low, hissing tone. You said that I shouldn't move in one direction or another with this, so what are you doing? Anko, keeping the same innocent expression, said, oh, yeah, that's right, I did say that, didn't I? Her face immediately broke out into a sly, serpentine grin, but I never said that Iruka and I wouldn't give either of you an occasional nudge in the right direction, now, did I? Kurenai sighed, holding her forehead in the fingers of her right hand for a few moments before saying, please, Anko, just cut it out for now. Anko dropped the serpentine grin and adopted her usual friendly smirk before walking past Kurenai into the house, whispering to her as she passed by, lighten up, hun. I'll leave you be for now, but mark my words, you'll thank me for it later. Kurenai nodded her thanks to Anko and escorted her into the house, where both of them began to take their drinks of choice from the trays that Naruto and Iruka brought into the living room. Over the next 20 minutes or so, the rest of Naruto's guests had showed up to the home, Kurenai welcoming each of them in turn and escorting them into the house. Sume, surprisingly, had not brought Kuromaru with her, explaining that he had been in heat, and had elected to stay at the Inuzuka compound to take care of his not-so-little problem. Sume, along with Choji and Ino, were both given the grand tour by Kurenai, which the three of them found both strange and a bit amusing. Sume, of course, knew about Naruto taking Kurenai on as a Fuinjutsu apprentice, as well as training her in the ninja arts where she was lacking in order to balance out her chakra control. Choji and Ino, however, were in the dark about this, so when they asked Kurenai how she knew the house so well, she simply filled them in on all of what she and Naruto had been doing. The project, her apprenticeship, his additional training, all of it. she chose not to take them into the basement, as dinner time was nigh at hand. Naruto, upon seeing that everyone had arrived, after Sume, Choji and Ino were brought back downstairs by Kurenai, went around and greeted everyone. Having seen the rest more recently, he spent some additional time catching up with Temari Nara. Temari still wore the same basic style of battle dress that Naruto had long since associated with her, and even served as her casual wear. Well, at least she didn't bring her battle fan, too, he thought to himself as he continued his basic visual assessment. Her sandy blonde hair was no longer in 4 pigtails, but worn loose and flowing down her back, ending just below her shoulder blades. Naruto thought this look suited the former Suna Kunoichi, who had retired from Suna's forces and donned the Konoha forehead protector upon her marriage to Shikamaru. In spite of her grumblings about her lazy husband, there was an air about her that indicated that she was happier than she had ever been in her life. Shortly after Naruto had made his rounds to everyone, he brought the roast out of the oven, and also retrieved several other dishes that he had spent the day preparing and keeping warm. Several rotisserie chickens, grain and vegetable dishes of all kinds, and a few seafood dishes to satisfy Kurenai's palate as well. The seafood dishes, and the looks that Naruto and Kurenai gave each other when Naruto brought them out, did not go unnoticed by the rest of their company, especially Shikamaru, who simply whispered to his wife with a smirk, "Wow, what a pain, huh?" Temari's response, of course, was to knock her husband upside the head, effectively shutting him up about the issue for the rest of the night. Naruto had set up the feast in a buffet style, littering the dishes all over the kitchen counters so that anyone could come and grab what they wanted to eat. Once everyone had filled their plate with what they wanted, they all sat at the now expanded dining room table, said a quick blessing and began to happily dig in. As they ate and enjoyed light conversation at first, the topic of discussion eventually fell upon the occasion that this day was set aside in remembrance of the victory of the allied shinobi forces against Madara Uchiha and the Akatsuki. They all started sharing war stories, most of them of the rather funny variety, such as missions completed despite idiocy on the parts of those involved, or some of the antics that they found themselves roped into while in base camp. Before too much longer, Iruka grabbed his sake saucer, stood up, and asked for everyone's attention. Once he saw that he had it, he began, "I know I'm not the host of this party, but I'd like to propose a toast." He paused as he looked over at Naruto before continuing, "We celebrate the end of the Fourth Shinobi World War today, but I'd like to toast the man who was directly responsible for bringing about the end of Akatsuki, and Madara Uchiha. To our greatest hero, and my best friend, Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze." Cries of, "Here, here," were uttered as everyone at the table emptied the contents of their sake saucers in salute of the man whose house they were currently dining in. Naruto was mildly surprised at Iruka's use of the Namikaze name. As Iruka sat down, Naruto stood up, sake saucer in hand, and spoke as everyone refilled their saucers. "Thank you, Iruka-sensei, and thank you everyone for honoring me in such a way. But I believe that the greatest honor should go to so many other heroes, but especially," he paused, allowing the gravity of what he was about to say to sink in, "I'd like to honor and toast those who were close to our hearts, and who gave everything they had, even their life's blood, in order to see the war ended. I propose a toast to those who didn't make it back, and can't be here with us to celebrate today." Naruto raised his saucer. Jiraiya, the pervy sage, Neji, who sat to Naruto's left, stood and toasted. Rock Lee Tenten stood and toasted, with aide, Shino Aburame. Shikamaru stood and looked over at Kurenai, seeming asking a question with his eyes. She smiled and nodded at him, at which he toasted, Asuma Sarutobi. Temari stood and toasted, Baki-sensei. Anko stood and toasted, Yugao Azuki. Iruka stood and toasted, Ebisu. Konohamaru stood and toasted, Udon Mitokado. Hanabi stood and toasted, Moegi Udatane. Ino stood and toasted, Sai. Shoji stood and toasted, my father, Shuza Akamichi. Sum stood, smiled sadly and toasted, my daughter, Hana Inazuka, and her three partners, the Heimaru brothers. Kurenai stood, smiling sadly as well, and placed a hand on her stomach. Looking down at where she placed her hand, she toasted, my son, Asumaru Yuhi Sarutobi. Naruto quickly responded, here, here, to which everyone at the table responded accordingly, all emptying their saucers and glasses in unison. As they finished the toast and subsequently, dinner, Naruto made one final announcement, if all of you would, please follow me. I have a surprise in store for you. At this, Naruto led them all to the teleportation seal. After they all got on it, Naruto teleported them all to the second-level basement and into his music studio, showing them to the lounge chairs and sofas that he had set up. Each of them took a seat, and once they were all seated, Naruto created 3 shadow clones and went with them into the recording studio where a bass guitar, an electric guitar, a keyboard and a drum set were set up. The clones took the drums and guitars, while Naruto himself took the keyboard. Naruto addressed his audience, I'd like to play a piece in honor of tonight, and what tonight represents. I think you'll all enjoy this, it's called, Kindred Spirits. Kindred Spirits, by Liquid Tension Experiment. Everyone looked on as the clone on the lead guitar opened up. A few seconds later, the clone on the bass guitar joined in, followed by the drummer. It wasn't until about 30 seconds in that Naruto himself joined in on the keyboard, fingers beginning to fly across it playing note after note in swift succession, causing mixed reactions and displays of surprise in this audience. Shikamaru looked on with his amazed, thoughtful frown. Tamari was wide-eyed, as were most of the others there. Kurenai, however, looked on with a grin showing great pride, and almost appeared to have stars in her eyes. She already knew of his musical prowess, but unlike the others, she was paying attention to the facial expressions that he and his clones were making while they were playing. They were so wrapped up in what they were doing that they appeared to be within their own world. They were all feeling the music they were playing, and they were thoroughly enjoying themselves, to the degree that it didn't even appear that they had to concentrate on the instruments they were playing. Swift keyboard strokes, followed by complex bass lines and flurries of distorted guitar strings, all in harmony with perfectly and precisely timed pounds on the drums. Kurenai drank it all in. She had never heard him play a piece of music this fast, this technical or this complex before. Looking at her, one might wonder if she just became another of Naruto's fangirls. The starry look in her eyes only seemed to become more pronounced as Naruto's performance continued. She would be thankful later on that everyone was too wrapped up in the performance themselves to notice Kurenai's posture. As Naruto closed out the last note, Kurenai, in a very out-of-character gesture, jumped up, cheered and whooped in applause and approval at the spectacle she had just witnessed. The rest of them began to do the same, albeit a bit more slowly, all in shock in Naruto's seemingly prodigious musical ability, none of the rest of them having known that he could just perform the feat of utter majesty to which they had all just had the privilege of bearing witness. When Naruto dispelled the clones and re-entered the room where they were seated, they began to surround him, excitedly asking him all kinds of questions, such as how he learned to play like that, or what other kinds of music he liked to play. These questions were simply answered honestly and patiently. When asked if he would perform for the village, he answered emphatically, no. I have enough problems with fangirls, already, I don't want to create any more, so, guys, if you don't mind, would you keep my ability to do this on the down low? They all nodded reluctantly, Ino being the last, and only doing so when both Naruto and Kurenai gave her a glare that promised slow, painful and tortuous death if she did not. The killing intent laced in with said glares might have helped a little. Sum then asked, "Well, pup, we know you can play several instruments. Can you sing as well?" Kurenai answered before Naruto could. "Naruto has a magnificent voice, Sum. He also uses clones as backup singers, and their voices harmonize even more beautifully than the instruments that they all play together." Sum was struck with awe at this declaration, as were the rest of them. There truly was more to their friend than even they had thought. The girls all found it rather intriguing that Kurenai apparently knew him so well, as she had been the only one to show no surprise at Naruto's display of talent and skill. As Kurenai looked around and glanced at them all, she realized that they were hungry for some gossip and girl talk. After the questions all died down, Naruto led everyone back to the teleportation seal and brought everyone back to the main level of the house. Once they were out of the seal, Kurenai asked, "Hey Naruto, do you mind if we girls use the onsen?" The other ladies who were present all wore various expressions of surprise on their faces, not realizing that Naruto had his own onsen. Naruto shrugged, "Sure, go right ahead." Kurenai then led all of the girls to the wing of the house and into her favorite private hot spring bath, while Naruto and the guys stayed in the living room, drinking sake and some of the vodka that was still left. Naruto also retrieved and set up a poker table, with some chips and several decks of cards. Both groups were glad that they had separated themselves from the other. The guys could have a little fun playing hold'em, while the girls could begin their inquisition without the guys to overhear. "Okay, Kurenai, you didn't spill a while back, so now you need to spill," exclaimed Ino, not surprisingly the first to begin. Kurenai responded by looking first at Ino, then at Sum, Tenten, Temari, Hanabi and finally Anko. As she did this, she warned, "This does not leave this room. What's said here, stays here, got it?" After a series of nods signifying their acceptance of this condition, Kurenai began, "Ino, this all started when Naruto found me at Asuma's gravesite, and we went to lunch afterwards. When you found me walking home, it was Naruto that I was thinking about." Ino gave a wry, satisfied smirk as her suspicions had just been verbally confirmed, while the other girls simply listened on in interest as Kurenai relayed the rest of the tale to the present time. Kurenai would smile wistfully and adopt a faraway look when talking about Naruto at certain points, none of which was lost on the other girls. Temari asked with a smirk in an effort to try to tease her, "So when are you gonna stake your claim, huh, Kurenai?" Kurenai, instead of sputtering or gaping as Temari was expecting, simply became a bit downcast. "I'm honestly not sure how to approach this," she began as she shook her head. "Anko gave me some great advice to just let whatever happened happen naturally, and not to force anything in one direction or another, and that's what I've been doing, but, well, there are other issues that I need to work out, still. And I can tell that Naruto has a few of his own. There are things he's not ready to talk about, yet, so." "Kurenai," interrupted Sum, getting Kurenai's attention before continuing, "at what point do you think you will be ready to move on this?" Kurenai looked at her and simply shrugged, "I don't know, Sum. I honestly don't know. I'm doing much better with the idea now than when Anko and I first talked about it, but, as I said, it's not just me, it's him, too. I don't want to risk destroying a relationship before it's even had a chance to start." Tenten voiced her thoughts, "Kurenai, we've all seen the way you look at him. Even now, we hear the way you talk about him. So, I will directly ask you on behalf of all of our mutual trusted friends, here, how do you feel about Naruto? And please be honest with us." Kurenai's forlorn look faded, turning into a wistful smile once more as she thought about the man who had so captured her thoughts and heart. "He's the most magnificent man I've ever known, it's like he's the man of my dreams and my best friend all rolled into one. Her smile became wider as she appeared to glow with joy and continued, I don't even know when I started to make this shift, but, oh, I'll just say it, I'm in love with him. All of the girls simply smiled knowingly, none of them surprised by this admission. Hanabi spoke up this time, now, was that so hard? Kurenai shook her head in the negative, her smile softening some, but still there, no, it wasn't. It was actually easier than I thought it would be. Anko piped in, so when are you gonna make your move on your mate-to-be, Kurenai's face became serious at this point. The other girls adopted similar expressions of seriousness, seeing that Kurenai had something important to say. Kurenai began, remember what I was saying before about both of us having issues? Everyone nodded and Kurenai continued, the issues I'm having to work through are, well, they're being worked through the more I get to know him. At first, I thought the difference in our ages might be a concern, but the more I talk to him, his mentality is such that I forget just how young he is. Our talks are, well, they're just so refreshing and stimulating to me. There are a couple more things as well. I was worried about how this might affect our own reputations. At this, Ino raised an eyebrow in confusion. Kurenai, why is that a concern for you? My main concern, Ino, is that it might affect how either or both of us might be regarded from a professional standpoint. I don't think Naruto has to worry about it so much, but I've worked very long and very hard to build my credibility as a top kunoichi. If people see me as some kind of cradle-robbing gold digger, it might affect whether clients would want my services. It could reflect badly on the village to have someone with that kind of reputation in their ranks, and I don't have the abilities of someone like Kakashi or Tsunade to offset that kind of a situation. That might not be as much of a concern as you think, Kurenai, replied Anko, hoping to reassure her friend and get her moving more in the direction she wanted her to move in. Naruto's training you, now. You may not be at Kakashi's or Tsunade's level now, but I don't think it'll be too long before you are. I mean, even looking at you, we can tell that you've been training. On top of that, you're the only apprentice of the only true living sealmaster in the elemental nations right now. Trust me, I don't think you're going to have a problem from a professional standpoint. Kurenai couldn't help but sigh and smile at this. Yeah, I guess you're right, Anko. Kurenai paused for a moment, her face becoming somewhat forlorn, but also showing a bit of concern. But there's also another issue, and this is more about Naruto than me. I probably know Naruto better than any of you right now, and I know for a fact that I've seen sides of him that none of you ever have. I can see it in his eyes. Something bad happened to him when he was involved with Hinata. Hanabi's eyes widened at this as Kurenai continued, and it's something he's not ready to talk about yet. I'm not going to pressure him into discussing it, but until he's comfortable enough with me to go there, I don't think he can freely give himself to a relationship with anyone. Nobody knew what to say to this. Hanabi, of course, knew exactly what it was that had happened between Naruto and Hinata, but didn't feel that it was her place to say anything. She kept silent, but made a mental note to talk to Naruto before the night was over. Tamari, in an effort to cheer up the atmosphere, spoke up in a reassuring tone, don't you worry, Kurenai. Knowing Naruto, if there's anyone he will talk about it with, it's you. He'll come around when he's ready. All of the other girls nodded in agreement with this, and this seemed to reassure the ruby-eyed Junin that her patience would be rewarded, and that she didn't have as much to fear as she thought she did. Eventually, after deciding that they'd had enough soak time, the ladies got out of the water, got dressed and went back out to join the men. Hold'em was always a great way for the guys to relax with each other. Naruto, of course, with his own freakish luck, made the game a little less fun for the others as first, as he just seemed to keep winning round after round after round. After a while, he decided to bow out of the game, returning all of the guys' money to them so that they could enjoy a game that they now had a better chance of winning with Naruto's absence from it. Naruto was just bringing snacks and drinks while watching the current round, at which the river had just been revealed. It was between Neji and Choji right now as to who'd take the pot. Everyone else had already folded. Both went all in. Neji, having bet first, revealed pocket aces, giving in a full house, aces over sevens. Thinking he had won the pot, he started to reach for the chips until Choji stayed his hand, revealing pocket sevens, giving him 4 sevens, and beating Neji's full house. Neji face faulted, knowing that only Naruto usually had such freakishly good luck. Choji happily took his chips, and they guys prepared to place blinds to start another hand. As they were doing this, Neji, seemingly out of the blue, asked with a smirk, "So, Naruto, when are you going to pop the question?" Naruto raised an eyebrow, not sure he was comfortable with where this was going. "What do you mean, Neji?" "I mean, when are you going to ask Kurenai Yuhi to marry you?" Now it was Naruto's turn to face fault. "Say, what? I'm not even dating her." "Yeah, keep telling yourself that, Naruto," said Shikamaru, deciding to add his 2 ryo to the conversation. Neji's face lost the smirk. "Naruto," he began, "I think I'm speaking for everyone here when I say that you deserve a little happiness, and it's obvious to us that you love her." Naruto looked around the table to see all of the guys smirking at him while nodding. Iruka piped in, "Yeah, Naruto, you don't do a very good job of hiding it." Naruto began to sputter a bit before he simply sighed in resignation, nodding himself to show that he could see that they knew. Naruto began to voice his opinion, "You're right, guys. The truth is that I'm crazy about her, more than I ever was with Sakura or even Hinata. I guess, considering my luck with the opposite, I'm a little gun-shy about the issue, you know." "I know what's holding you back, Naruto," Neji began, and he continued right as Naruto was about to speak, "but you need to let that go and move on. Kurenai is not Hinata, and she'd never in a million years do what Hinata did to you." The guys found themselves curious as to what Neji was referring. What had Hinata done to Naruto? They knew that he and Hinata had been together briefly during the war, and that they broke up, but none of them knew the details behind the breakup, and Naruto was notoriously tight-lipped about it. Naruto closed his eyes and sighed, "I'll think on it. Let's just drop it for now, okay?" "Fair enough," responded Neji, as the rest of the guys nodded in agreement. It was at this point where the girls rejoined them. They greeted the men in the room jovially and rejoined the party, all of them intermingling once again. Wanting to talk to Naruto, Hanabi asked Konohamaru to flag Naruto down and bring him to her. When Naruto came over to Hanabi, she asked him to wheel her out onto the back patio so that she could have a private word with him. Once they were outside with the back sliding glass door closed, Hanabi, deciding to take the direct approach, asked, "Naruto, how do you feel about Kurenai?" Surprised, and a little unnerved, by this unexpected question from Hanabi of all people, Naruto raised a confused eyebrow and asked in a tone belying a small amount of suspicion, "Why do you ask?" While thinking, why did Hanabi of all people have to ask me this? In knowing that he couldn't really change the subject or play it off with her, she just had a way of penetrating his defenses and getting to the heart of the matter, much like a real little sister. Hanabi just smiled disarmingly and responded, "Just humor me." Naruto sighed and began to think about how best to put his feelings for the woman to Hanabi. Coming to the conclusion that he should give her the same courtesy of directness that she gave him, he asked, "Just between you and me?" Hanabi nodded, knowing that this could be a touchy subject for the tall blonde. Naruto answered her question. Well, I love her. I love everything about her. The sound of her voice, the way her hair seems wild yet well kept at the same time, her gorgeous eyes. I love talking to her about anything and everything. I love her warm smile when she gives a real one. She just has a way of calming me when she's near. Hanabi chose to interrupt at this point, seeing that Naruto could probably go on and on listing the things that he loved about Kurenai. Naruto, is your past with Hinata holding you back from pursuing her? Naruto closed his eyes, sighed and nodded slowly. Hanabi adopted a sad, concerned frown. Why? Naruto took a few seconds before attempting to answer. Well, I don't know, honestly. After a few seconds of watching Naruto try and fail to collect his thoughts, Hanabi chose to probe a little and help him to direct them. Big brother, have you ever talked about this with anyone? I mean, at length. Naruto shook his head in the negative before adding, it's not exactly something I want to relive, you know. Hanabi smiled sadly at him. I know, believe me, I know. But I know you pretty well, and I know that talking about it will help you. Talking about what Hinata did to me was the last thing I wanted to do, and I kept it in for months. Ko and I were still getting to know each other, and, well, the closer we got, the more I began to see that my keeping that in was affecting our relationship, because it affected all my thoughts and feelings at the time. Ko somehow managed to gently coax it out of me, and when I talked to him, and cried on him, her smile widened as she fondly remembered the event she was retelling, and cried on him some more. She laughed softly at this before continuing, we made a breakthrough in our relationship, and now look at us. Naruto smiled, happy for the young woman before him that he had come to love as a little sister. Hanabi went on, Naruto, my point is that even though talking about it is the last thing you want to do, it's probably the best thing for you to do. Getting it out was the best decision I ever made, and I'm much freer as a result. And to let you know as well, Kurenai can see that you're shackled, she doesn't know by what, but she knows that you're weighed down, and she's sure that it's about you and Hinata. Naruto simply listened, knowing that she was probably right, but still finding himself rather uncomfortable with the idea of opening up about his own private grief. The fact that Kurenai knew that something of this nature was holding him down came as a bit of a surprise to him, but knowing Kurenai as well as he did now, he came to realize that he shouldn't be as surprised as he was. She had a sharp mind and excellent observation skills, after all. Hanabi ended with a few words of encouragement. When you're ready, talk to Kurenai about it, Naruto. I think it will do wonders for both of you, okay? Naruto simply smiled and nodded, knowing that Hanabi did have his best interests at heart. He had to admit that it was rather humbling to him, receiving this advice from a 15-year-old girl, but he knew that she was right. Hanabi smiled right back, made the effort to stand up and extended her arms towards him. Now, come here, you. Naruto laughed softly and leaned in, pulling her into a warm, firm embrace, kissing the top of her head as she returned it just as firmly. Thank you, he said, I needed that. And you're right. It is about time that I talked about it with someone, he finished with a sincere smile. After helping the girl back into her wheelchair, he rolled her back into the house, both Kurenai and Konohamaru noticing that they were coming back in. Konohamaru came to Hanabi while Kurenai approached Naruto, each pulling the other aside and asking if everything was okay. Hanabi simply assured Konohamaru that everything was fine, and that she just needed to give Naruto some sisterly advice. Naruto, on the other hand, looked to be a little more at peace with himself in a way that Kurenai had never before seen, intrigued just as to what it might have been that he and Hanabi talked about, but choosing not to pry at the moment, knowing that she and Naruto could talk about it later after everyone left. As the party began to wind down and everyone started to take their leave, Naruto and Kurenai began to clean up the mess and put everything away. Naruto was glad that Kurenai stuck around. He was hoping to get the chance to have the talk with her that Hanabi had urged him to begin. After they had finished cleaning up, Naruto prepared some tea for them and brought it into the living room, sitting next to Kurenai on the love seat that she chose for herself. Kurenai began with a smile. Well, I'd say that went quite well, wouldn't you? Naruto smiled and nodded, looking off into space. Yeah, tonight was a lot of fun. Kurenai chose this time to broach the question prompted by her earlier observation of his peaceful state. So, what did you and Hanabi talk about? When you both came back in, you seemed less burdened, somehow. Naruto nodded in agreement. Wow, you really do know me well if you were able to pick that up. He trailed off for a few moments before continuing, his smile beginning to fade as he began to broach a heavy subject for him. She just suggested that it was time I talked about certain things with you. Kurenai raised an eyebrow and responded with a guarded tone. Did she, now? Naruto continued. Yeah, she mentioned that you could see that. Well, there's something that's been weighing on me that I haven't been willing or able to share with you yet. Kurenai relaxed as she nodded in understanding, her fears that Hanabi had broken her confidence concerning what was said in the baths safely allayed. Naruto began what would be a long and hard conversation for him. Well, how much do you know about my relationship with Hinata? Kurenai shook her head as she responded, not much. Any time I tried to get Hinata to talk about it after your breakup, she got angry and told me she didn't want to talk about it. I eventually gave up asking, she finished with resigned sadness. Naruto took a few breaths as he recalled the breakup with the Hyuga heiress. In a strained, yet controlled voice, he asked her, did you know that she became pregnant with our child? Kurenai responded with a gasp and a look of utter shock. She'd had no idea that Hinata had ever been pregnant. As she pulled herself together, shaking her head and blinking her eyes in an effort to wrap her mind around this revelation, she found herself feeling apprehensive as she saw an intense sadness in Naruto's face, his eyes filled with a deep pain that she'd never seen in them, even when the anguish of his isolation as Konoha's pariah was plainly obvious. She gently took his hand in one of hers, and instinctively brought her other hand to his face, cupping his cheek in a comforting yet intimate way, looking him dead in the eye. What happened? She asked slowly, a look of fear and concern on her face. Naruto's eyes began to well up. The irony of the situation hit Kurenai with all the subtlety of 1,000 paper bombs going off at once as she remembered their reversed positions at Asuma's gravesite. Kurenai's own eyes began to well up at his pain, as she waited patiently for him to answer. Unable to hold back the tears anymore, Naruto began to squeeze his eyes shut, sobbing in grief and anguish that he had been keeping to himself since the war. He replied, she aborted it, and at this admission the tears and sobs just flowed, unhindered and free. No, cried Kurenai softly, knowing exactly how it felt to be robbed of a child due to the malicious and callous actions of another. She had just discovered that she and Naruto knew each other to a depth that she couldn't even begin to imagine until now. She herself began to cry as well as she pulled Naruto into a tight hug, leaning back as she pulled his head into her chest and resting her chin against the top of his head. Naruto accepted her embrace and wrapped his arms around her as well, sobbing loudly as he continued, We never even found out if it was a boy or a girl. I was going to be a father, I was so happy knowing that, and she just destroyed it, just to spite her family. He continued to sob, his body shaking as he poured his grief out. No, cried Kurenai, softly still but with much more force, feeling all of Naruto's pain with him, shedding tears with him, and for him. She stroked her fingers through his hair and kissed the crown of his head. Naruto had more to tell. She didn't even ask me. She didn't even consider how I'd feel. He let out a few more loud sobs before continuing. When she told me, it was as though it just didn't matter to her that she'd killed her own baby. Kurenai's grief became laced with intense anger. She gritted her own teeth as she continued crying with Naruto, letting him pour everything out. She tried to stop me from breaking up with her. She said to me, "Don't break up with me over something like this." He let out a few more sobs and continued yet again, as though this was a minor argument over nothing. It's okay. Kurenai interrupted through her own tears and sobs, firmly but with great compassion. Leaning back and bringing his face up so that she could meet his gaze, she spoke again, "You don't have to say any more. I know it all. I know how you feel. I know how it hurts," the tone of her voice almost becoming desperate as she tried to will the empathy and understanding that she felt into Naruto's mind and heart, "and I know that you would have made the best daddy in the whole wide world." Naruto's tear-filled, bloodshot eyes looked at Kurenai, filled with a mixture of wonder, hope, gratitude. It was all of those things, yet there was something more, something deeper, something of his own soul. It wasn't lust. Kurenai couldn't even call it love, that just didn't seem to do it justice. She somehow knew that she had glimpsed something of him that nobody else ever had, and more profoundly, that nobody else ever would. Yet more amazing, still, was that she could see that he had somehow seen something similar in her as well. That phenomenon that was unidentifiable, yet felt closer and more familiar than anything else in the world. Kurenai spoke before thinking, "If it had been me, I would have borne your child, gladly." Naruto's eyes went wide at this. Had she just admitted that she would have been glad to have children by him? She simply nodded, "It's true. Naruto, I'm not sure this is the best time or situation in which to say this, but I've fallen so deeply in love with you." Naruto's eyes went wider still as Kurenai made her tearful confession, "These past few weeks that I almost haven't known what to do with myself." She began to smile as she continued, Naruto just looking at her and listening in stunned silence, "I've been so scared about this. A few weeks ago, I was a numb and broken-hearted woman, and then, out of nowhere, you come along. And then, before I know it, we're spending most of every single day together." And she began to both cry and laugh at the same time. I'm finding myself measuring time by thinking about when I'm going to see you again." Naruto had begun to smile widely the more she told him as he chose to respond, "Kurenai, I love you, as well. I love you, more than I've ever loved, well, anyone." Kurenai's eyes and smile both became wider at this admission. Naruto continued, "Do you remember when I told you how when I was feeling lonely, there was a part of it that I just couldn't identify?" Kurenai nodded quickly as Naruto continued, "Well, I've only just come to realize this recently, but when I'm with you, for the first time, ever, I don't feel lonely at all, anymore." Kurenai's grin grew even wider at this as she reacted in a very impulsive way. She slammed her lips into his, wrapping her arms around his neck and shedding tears of joy as she was doing this. When she pulled away, she saw that he had a dazed look on his face. She couldn't help but giggle at him. Naruto began to sputter, trying to form a coherent thought. This was not how he imagined this conversation going, though he certainly wasn't complaining about it. After all, here he was, with the most beautiful woman he'd ever laid eyes on in his opinion, confessing her love to him. Kurenai's smile began to morph into a look of worry. Naruto noticed this and asked, "What's wrong?" Kurenai began to look downward. Naruto, I'm still scared. This is moving so fast that, I don't really know how to handle it. Naruto, I've worked so hard to build my reputation and credibility as a professional kunoichi who can stand on my own merits and skills. I'm worried that this will cause me to lose the respect that I've worked so hard to build. I'm worried that people will see me with you, and knowing how far apart we are in age, they'll think that I'm a shallow cradle robber and gold digger. Hey, said Naruto firmly yet gently, bringing his hands up to hold her shoulders in a comforting way. As far as I'm concerned, they can think what they want, I don't care what they think of you or me. Naruto, I have to be concerned about it, Kurenai interrupted.